After the chilling encounter with Anastasia, the head of the Vampire Council, Peter felt a heavy burden on his shoulders. The trial was set to take place in the grand city of Veilcrest, a haven for supernatural creatures hidden from mortal eyes. Peter and Adrian traveled under the cloak of night, keeping to the shadows to avoid unwanted attention. As they made their way towards Veilcrest, Peter couldn't help but marvel at the magic that seemed to hum in the air. It was a city untouched by time, its ancient architecture a testament to the centuries it had witnessed. The Council of the Rose resided in a grand Gothic castle, looming ominously on a cliff. As they approached, Peter felt an inexplicable sense of dread. He was about to face the highest authority among vampires, and his life was on the line. The trial was swift and ruthless. Peter stood before the council, their cold, calculating eyes scrutinizing him. He pleaded his case, explaining his innocence and expressing his willingness to abide by their laws. After hours of deliberation, the council made their decision. Peter was to be spared, on the condition that he served the council for a century, doing their bidding. It was a harsh sentence, but it was better than death. Relieved yet weighed down by the new responsibility, Peter embarked on his service. He was sent on missions, some dangerous, others diplomatic. It was during one of these missions that he met her, a vampire named Seraphina. Seraphina was unlike anyone Peter had ever met. She was strong and fierce, yet bore a softness in her eyes that hinted at a tragic past. They grew close, finding comfort in their shared immortality. It wasn't long before Peter found himself falling for her. However, Peter's happiness was short-lived. One night, while on a mission in a remote village, he discovered a sinister plot. A faction of rogue vampires was planning to overthrow the council. And their leader was none other than Seraphina. Peter was torn. He had come to love Seraphina, but he was bound by his duty to the council. He decided to confront her, hoping there was a misunderstanding. But as he faced Seraphina, revealing what he had discovered, she confirmed his worst fears. "Yes, Peter," she said, her voice cold. "I am leading the rebellion. And I want you to join me." Peter was shocked. He had to choose between his duty to the council and his love for Seraphina. And he knew, whichever path he chose, his life would never be the same. Just as he was about to respond, an arrow whizzed past him, embedding itself in the wall behind. A group of men emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing in the dim light. They were hunters, humans who hunted supernatural creatures, and they had found their next targets. Peter and Seraphina were surrounded. The hunters moved closer, their weapons gleaming menacingly under the moonlight. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as Peter grappled with the situation. He had to make a choice, and he had to make it fast. Despite the betrayal, Peter found himself instinctively protecting Seraphina. They fought the hunters off, their vampire strength and speed giving them an advantage. However, the hunters were trained and relentless. The fight was brutal, and Peter received a wound from a silver-tipped arrow, causing him to falter. Seeing Peter injured, Seraphina leapt to his defense, her eyes blazing with fury. She fought off the remaining hunters, her movements swift and lethal. Once they were all dispatched, she hurried to Peter's side, her earlier coldness replaced with genuine concern. Peter, weakened from his wound, fell into unconsciousness. When he awoke, he found himself in a hidden sanctuary, a place unknown to both the council and the hunters. Seraphina had nursed him back to health. Confused and conflicted, Peter confronted Seraphina about the rebellion. She confessed her plans, her hatred for the council's control and her desire for freedom. She spoke of her vision for a world where vampires weren't controlled by ancient laws but could choose their own path. A world where they weren't feared but accepted. Peter was torn. He understood Seraphina's desire for change, and part of him yearned for that freedom too. But he was bound by his promise to the council, a promise that had saved his life. Meanwhile, news of the hunters' attack reached the council. They were furious, their anger directed at Peter. They believed he had failed his duty and was collaborating with the rebels. They decided to hunt him down, not knowing he was already severely wounded. Peter and Seraphina, oblivious to the council's decision, were at crossroads. Seraphina asked Peter to join her, to fight for a better future. Peter, still indecisive, asked for time to contemplate. But time was a luxury they didn't have. As Peter wrestled with his decision, the sanctuary was breached. The council's enforcers stormed in, capturing Peter and Seraphina. They were taken to Vale Crest, bound in chains. Their trial was set, and this time, the charges were severe. As Peter stood before the council again, this time alongside Seraphina, he knew he had to make a choice. A choice between his loyalty to the council and his love for Seraphina, between his past and the uncertain future. Just as the trial was about to begin, a loud explosion shook the council's castle. Smoke filled the room, and amidst the confusion, a group of rebels led by a figure familiar to Peter stormed in. It was Adrian, his sire, leading the rebellion in an attempt to save him. Peter was stunned. All this time, Adrian was part of the rebellion too. He had more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. His life was about to take another unexpected turn, and the choices he had to make were becoming even more difficult.